Hi, it's Dwyer, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. The fight that's going to happen in a few hours. Unbeaten welterweight champion Kell Brook's challenge of unbeaten middleweight champion Gennady Golovkin is one of those fights that, quite frankly, only comes around once every several years. With all due respect to Roman Gonzalez, who himself is unbeaten and is moving up multiple weight classes, and with all due respect to Andre Ward, who's had a great career, who has beaten people like Carl Froch, Mikkel Kessler, Chad Dawson on his way to his fight against Sergey Kovalev. Let me just say that, life's unfair. It's unfair. Many of us don't go for the girl who's perfect for us. Many of us go for the girl who has an attitude problem, smokes cigarettes, has a little bit of a temper, is a little bit hard to figure out, right? Again, life's not fair. The people who captivate us for whatever reason. I'm just here to say that, just talking for myself, I've rarely been captivated by an upcoming fight and the circumstances around the fight than I have been over this fight. I think I know what's going to happen, but I'm not sure. Right? This fight really is beyond hype, isn't it? On the merits. Right? On the merits. I mean, not to, a casual fan just looking for an exciting event, but for the boxing hardcore, people who love boxing, who track boxing fights, on the merits. I believe this is the biggest fight in the United Kingdom since unbeaten Mikkel Kessler visited to fight unbeaten Joe Calzaghe, right? At the end of this fight, someone is going to be king of the world. Someone is going to be unbeaten. Right? Think about it. Unbeaten. They're going to be in such a position that we're going to look at their resume. We're going to look at this fight, which is going to shine brightly. Remember, boxing's not linear. There's a lot of emotion. A lot of it depends on the moment. Right? We're going to look at the winner of this fight as a Hall of Famer. This fight is going to validate someone big time. Now, the dynamics of the fight, the fact that this fight was put together at the last minute, so much so that I made a video here online, innocently enough, talking about Golovkin against Chris Eubank Jr. Right? And then the comments started rolling in. The day I made it, apparently there was the pivot. The Eubank fight was off. Kell Brook had stepped out of nowhere to say, hey, I'm a welterweight. I want a shot at the middleweight title. And of all the middleweight champions out there, Golovkin, you are the one I want to fight. Let me say this too. This is exactly the feeling an earlier generation had about Muhammad Ali's challenge of a then bulletproof George Foreman, who had just destroyed Ken Norton and looked like he was going to have the heavyweight title for the next decade. Right? It wasn't about whether or not Ali won the fight. No, if you were an Ali fan, you were seriously worried, just like you are right now if you're a Kell Brook fan, that Ali was going to be badly hurt. That there was a chance that Ali could get knocked out. That his career could be shortened. That he could be embarrassed. That his health, not just his career, but his health was at risk. Right? I'm just telling you that you have the same concerns going into this fight concerning Kell Brook. Right? If you thought Kell Brook had problems against Carson Jones, and by the way, one of the secrets to this fight, one of the intrigues in this fight, is the fact that Carson Jones's trainer is the same trainer of Golovkin, Abel Sanchez. If you thought Kell Brook was in danger in that first Carson Jones fight, could you imagine if Jones was 2 weight classes bigger and had one of the biggest punches in boxing? This could end badly. I think it ends badly for Kell Brook. This is the same feeling many of us had when Ali fought Foreman. Right? Some of the themes in boxing keep reemerging. Now let me say this. When Ali beat Foreman, it was so shocking. Back then we didn't have the level of media that we have now. That when you first heard about it, you were wondering if the news reports were correct. I'm guessing in a few hours, if Kell Brook wins this fight by stoppage, as Ali did, right? For those of us who didn't see the fight live, right? Because I didn't see Ali Foreman live. For those of us who didn't see the fight live, the tape of this fight is going to become boxing legend, isn't it? That's how big this fight is. Now let me say, if we're lucky, if we are lucky, the fight will be so good that at the end of the fight, we almost won't care who won the fight. Right? Both men will be lifted in our eyes. We'll understand that we've witnessed something that needs to be put in a time capsule that becomes part of the ongoing narrative of the sport. So, returning to Ali, really there's a point in the thriller in Manila, right? Ali Frazier 3, where you think to yourself, my God, both of these guys are heroes. I'll give you another fight. The fight doesn't even have to go 14 rounds like that one did, right? There's a moment in Ray Leonard against Thomas Hearns, right, where you're looking at Hearns as he's getting beaten up late in the fight, where he then starts winning the fight. You have to see it to believe it. Where you look at both men and you're thinking to yourself, my God, how could either of these guys top this moment in their careers? Right? Let's talk about a fight that went shorter. There's a certain audacity, and this is the level on which this Kell Brook Golovkin fight is. There's a level of audacity in the opening round of Marvin Hagler against Thomas Hearns, where you're looking at Thomas Hearns and you're thinking, you've got to be kidding. This is how you're going to fight Marvin Hagler? Even though Hearns gets stopped in the third round, I can tell you ever since that fight, in fact, hell, from before that fight, I knew who Thomas Hearns was. The consummate warrior. An obvious Hall of Famer. Right? And of course, there's the fight that this fight is often compared to. Ray Leonard, who was not a middleweight at the time, fighting Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Right? Where you're looking at that fight, and just the fact that Ray is upright, still, in the middle of that fight, is jarring. Right? So, I'll just say this. Again, life is unfair. I know we've been prepared for things like Mayweather-Pacquiao. I know we've been prepared for months about Ward-Kovalev. Okay, fair enough. But this fight, we're an audacious welterweight champion has decided to take on a guy with arguably the biggest punch in the sport. Where that guy, to his credit, Golovkin, is willing to travel across the Atlantic to fight Kell Brook in his backyard. To me, this fight has all the hallmarks going in of a legacy-defining fight. This fight has all the hallmarks of a great fight. Right? I'm curious, just the way I see the fight, I'm curious on whether Kell Brook makes it to the 8th round. I'm curious on exactly what happens if Kell Brook lands a Sunday punch and Golovkin either takes it, right? That's what happened in Hearns-Hagler. Hearns lands right hands. Hagler backs up briefly, then continues coming forward. Or whether Kell Brook is going to stun us, land flush shots, and we're actually going to see Golovkin staggered. Understand, Golovkin has a lot in common with George Foreman, right? We haven't seen him hurt. We haven't seen the Golovkin fight, where there's a minute left in the round and he has to find a way to bridge that gap. Right? Golovkin's fights haven't been going the distance of late. It's hard to envision a fight where it hangs in the balance late in the match. So let me congratulate both men. Let me just say this fight legitimately, on the merits, is a great matchup between two unbeatens. I know the math is not quite going to add up. Whoever wins this fight, an argument can be made, other guys are more deserving of the best pound-for-pound title in the sport. Okay, fine. You know that's not the way life works. Right? You know that's not the way life works. You know that sometimes you're dating the girl who you know is wrong for you. And you know you're doing it for nobody other than yourself. Right? You know that. I'm just telling you the winner of this fight is going to be king of the ring. Right? If it's Kell Brook, you're never going to look at Kell Brook the same again. Right? You remember what Humphrey Bogart said in Casablanca? We'll always have Paris. Right? I can tell you Ali, late in his career, every time at least I looked at him, I always remembered how I thought he was going to get badly hurt in Zaire. Always. Right? I always wondered whether Ali intended to come out for the 15th round against Joe Frazier in the Thrilla in Manila. Right? Always wondered. There was always that mystery. Because with Ali, you knew you always had those fights. You always had those moments. Right? I can tell you, James Toney, I thought he was a great fighter before he destroyed Holyfield. I can tell you that I saw that fight. And after the fight happened, after I saw Holyfield destroyed in a way where he wasn't destroyed by Lennox Lewis, right? He wasn't destroyed by Mike Tyson. And here was James Toney putting him face first on the canvas. You know, I never looked at Toney the same way after that fight, right? And I thought Toney would win the fight. But wow, not like that. Kell Brook has that level of an opportunity. And as for Golovkin, I'll say this. In the 1980s, there was a fighter, Mike Tyson, and you thought he was a badass. He was young, early 20s, and there was active conversation in the boxing community on whether there had ever been a better heavyweight in history. At one point, Donald Trump, back then, was giving an interview, and he talked about how he wanted to see Mike Tyson against Ali. Right? And then, of course, you saw Tyson just run through guys who you knew were tough opponents. And it just validated who he was. Now, here we are more than, 20 years later. Hell, it's approaching 30 years later now. And we still remember the shadow Mike Tyson cast over the sport of boxing. Right? We still remember that level of dominance. That's exactly where we are right now with Golovkin. Where the question isn't, is Golovkin going to win the fight? The question is whether his opponent's going to make it to the 8th round. To close, let me just say, I don't see how Kell Brook ends this fight upright. I don't. I hope I'm going to look at this video after the fight happens, and I'm going to feel guilty. I'm going to feel like I sold Kell Brook short. I'm going to be thinking that I have just seen a masterpiece, right? Just plug in the masterpiece fight, right? The Rumble in the Jungle, the Thriller in Manila, right? You know when you've seen a great fight. Tony Holyfield, right? The first Tyson Holyfield. Right? Calzaghe, Kessler, where mid-fight, Joe Calzaghe solves the puzzle. Right? I'm hoping when I come back to this video in a few hours, I'm thinking, gosh, I was wrong about this fight. Whatever happens, I know when I return to this video, one of these two men is going to be king of the ring. Whether it's deserved or not. Right? I understand pound for pound people are going to say Roman Gonzalez, more fights. Right? Roman Gonzalez, jumped weight classes. Right? Why isn't he the best pound for pound? I understand many people are going to say that. And I'll just say, look, maybe he deserves to be. But there's always that fighter out there, right, who stops traffic for whatever reason. Right? People here online know I certainly don't consider Canelo to be the top fighter in the sport pound for pound, but yet I concede he stops traffic. Right? The winner of this fight, in my opinion, is going to be the king of the ring. It's going to be more important than pound for pound. It's going to be a moment in history that we remember, that we associate with the fighter. Let's hope this fight is so good that we associate this moment with both fighters, right? Where we look back and whoever loses the fight is so heroic that the moment can't be taken away from him, and that we want to associate him with that moment. An argument can be made. An argument can be made that Joe Frazier's best moments were in the last 3 rounds of the Thriller in Manila. An argument can be made that Marvin Hagler was never tested. Never, ever tested like he was in the first round by Thomas the Hitman Hearns. Let's hope we feel that way about this fight. Let's hope it's so good that this fight has no losers. Again, for the record, I think Golovkin wins the fight by KO. But keep in mind, years ago when I was a little boy, I saw absolutely no way that Ali was going to beat George Foreman. So I'm just hoping for greatness in this fight, whoever wins it. I just want a great fight. But yes, I'm one of those who thinks that Kell Brook doesn't know what he's bitten off here. Right? We'll find out in a matter of hours. Let me hear from you. Give us your thoughts. Record it here online before the fight takes place for your own edification later. So you could look back and say, you know what? This is what I was thinking right before this fight went off. Right? I hope you leave your comments for all of us in the comment section to this video. Thanks for stopping by.